Recently, I've been getting kind of obsessed with cyanotypes. That's because I can print them at home without access to a darkroom, and I can use my own photos to create digital negatives. I really want to share this magical process with you. So in this video today, I'm going to show you how I make cyanotypes from my own negatives from start to finish. And I'm also going to show you a special trick to make the blues of the image really vibrant and intense. I'm going to get right into it, but before I do that, please make sure to like this video and to subscribe to my channel if you like photography content like this. Thank you, and now back to the video. And actually the first thing I want to talk about is what materials you will need. Okay, first, of course, you will need cyanotype paper. You can totally make this yourself. It's fairly easy. I'm going to link you a blog post where I describe exactly how to do that. But for this video, I'm going to use shopboard paper. That's what I usually do because it's easier. I'm also going to link you a shop where I usually buy my paper in the UK. Okay, the next thing you need is a piece of glass or acrylic. I simply use a piece of glass from a picture frame. The other thing that's handy to have is some kind of clamps. I'm using these photography clamps. If you don't have it, just use the ones you use for hanging up clothes. That's also great. And finally, if you have it at home, gather some thick fabric. I like to use felt. This simply ensures more even contact and pressure between the paper and the glass. Alright, so that's the main tools done. Now the next thing we need is of course a negative. And the great thing is you can actually print those yourself at home. All you need is a printer, of course, and then some transparency film. I have an inkjet printer, so I have some inkjet film. Now I'll show you in Photoshop how I prepare my photo files for the negative printing and which print settings I use. Okay, so this is the photo I'm going to turn into a cyanotype. And to create a negative from an image in Photoshop, it's very easy. You just hit Command-I on a Mac or Control-I on a PC to invert the image. And that already looks like a negative. But the thing is, with cyanotype printing, you ideally want to use a photo or a negative that has quite a lot of contrast. So if you look at this image, you see that there isn't so much tonal range. So this is a sort of mid-gray, the face is also sort of mid-gray, and the table area is a little bit darker, but it's still in that mid-gray area. So this actually wouldn't print very well because you don't have enough contrast. So what I usually do is enhance the contrast by using curves. So I'm going to go here at the bottom onto the adjustment layer icon, then click on curves. And so what I'm trying to do now is to make this area darker, because I know that in reality this was a white table and I want that to look near white in my print. So I'm going to go onto this slider and drag it until I get a much darker bottom part of the picture. Because think about it, when you print this, these opaque areas are covering the paper from light, whereas this white area is very transparent, so that will let a lot of light go through. So in the final print, this area would be blue, whereas this area will remain pretty white, because the negative, the dark negative, is protecting it from being exposed by the sunlight. I'll show you a different example. This flower picture, here it's a bit the opposite. You have nice dark areas, but the whites or the bright tones are a little bit muted. So in this case, I would do the opposite. I would again create a curves layer and then try and lift the whites and the brighter grays in this area. So simply drag this slider down to make everything a bit brighter, and maybe even lift the curve in the middle. And then again, you can make the darks darker if you want to. And this would now give you a much better cyanotype print, because again, you have much more contrast between the whites and the darks, highlights and the shadows. Okay, but back to our image. I'm happy with this as a negative, so I'm going to create a different file now for printing. To do that, I will go and hit Command, Option, Shift, E on a Mac. On a Windows PC, it's Control, Alt, Shift, E. That just merges all the layers into one. Then I will hit Command A, so it selects the whole image, and then copy, Command C or Control C. Then you create a new file, so click File, New. And most of you will probably be printing A4 film, otherwise choose A5, but I'm gonna go for A4. Create, and create a new layer. So go on the plus sign down here, and then simply hit paste, Command V. And you see now our printing negative is a bit bigger than the new file. So just hit Command T or Control T to open Free Transform. And now you can size the image to fit this page. I'm going to make it quite small so I can fit 2 on one page just to save paper. One thing, keep in mind that you have to flip this when you're printing from a negative, otherwise the image will look the wrong way around. So simply right click and then you go down to flip, in this case flip horizontal, and now the image is nicely flipped, so it's definitely going to print the right way around. Alright, and then I will rotate it so I can fit 2 on the page. Okay, and then you can just copy this layer, so just drag it down here onto the plus sign and then again hit Command T for Free Transform and space it out on the page. Okay, so that's ready to print. So let me show you my printing settings. So go to File, Print. So I usually leave it on Printer Manages Colors and Relative Colorimetric. And then I'm going into the detailed print settings. Now make sure it's black and white, it shouldn't be color. And then for media quality, make sure that the quality is best. And then for media type or paper type, it's good to choose, for example, glossy photo paper. Or if you have it in your settings, go for Photo Paper Pro Platinum. That's my favorite setting. Hit save and then you can go and print it. One thing, after you printed a negative, let it dry for at least an hour, ideally overnight, so that your ink doesn't smudge on the paper. By the way, do you love taking portraits or self-portraits? In that case, check out my 2 free ebooks, which contain 50 ideas for portrait photography and self-portrait photography. I'm going to link them below in the description. Now back to the video. Alright, so hopefully you now have your negative ready. The next step is to now place the negative onto the paper, the cyanotype paper, for exposure. And there are some tips and tricks for that, so let me show you how I do it. First of all, make sure that the glass is clean. This is important. Next, place the paper coated side up at the bottom. Obviously, don't do this in direct sunlight because then the paper will start exposing. Do it somewhere out of the light, ideally. Then you place the negative onto the paper, and here it's super important that you place it with the printed side touching the paper. So the more tacky printed side of the negative has to be in contact with the cyanotype paper. Then if you want to, you can tape the two together. I like to do that so nothing slips. Then next step, if you have it, use some clamps to clamp the whole stack together. And if using, don't forget to put the fabric or the felt at the very bottom. This is simply to ensure more contact between the negative and the paper, which in turn means you get sharper prints. Okay, so now you got your photo negative stack prepared for exposure. The next step is to, of course, put it into UV light. In most cases, of course, you will do this outside, so you will take your whole paper negative stack outside and place it somewhere in the sunlight. Now, I live in the UK where it's often not that sunny, especially not now in the winter. So what I do instead is that I use a UV lamp. They're not that expensive, but they work really, really well. So if you're planning to do a lot of cyanotype printing, that might actually be an easier option for you than always waiting for sunlight. Now, it doesn't have to be sunny. You could also do it on a cloudy day, but I found that the exposure time becomes very long and sometimes it doesn't quite work, and it's just easier to do it in direct sun because you will get better results. So now let's talk about one of the more challenging aspects of cyanotype printing, which is how long to expose your print. Now, in direct sunlight, try somewhere around 5 to 10 minutes. If it's very cloudy, it could be something like 20 minutes up to an hour or even longer. It really depends on the weather and how dense the clouds are. With the UV lamp, your exposure time might be somewhere around 5 to 10 minutes as well. It also depends on how opaque or darkly printed your negative is. So this is really a bit of trial and error. Now, the great thing about cyanotype printing is that you can actually kind of see how well exposed the print is by looking at the color of the paper. So as you've seen in this video, or if you buy your own paper, when it's not at all exposed yet, it is sort of mid-green. Then once you start exposing it, the color will change from this mid-green to dark green. Then it will go somewhere more into blue-green, blue-gray, and eventually a more muted bronze gray. And so when you're new to cyanotype printing, I recommend that you just check the color of your paper carefully by lifting up the negative a little bit You can do that with tweezers and try not to shift the negative because then it will be blurry. And you will see that the print is well exposed when the bright areas of the negative, so what in the real photo is dark, in this case my hair, will turn into this muted bronze gray color. And another good indicator that your print is well exposed is when you start to see this very defined edge between the area under the negative and the outside border. One tip, it can sometimes happen that you lift the negative off, your print looks well exposed, and then you wash it, and then the image on the cyanotype paper kind of washes off and you're left with nothing. And that's usually when you haven't exposed the print long enough. So if that happens to you, you will need to leave it longer in the light. All right, then it's time to wash your print. And all you need to do is hold it under cold water for 5 minutes. You will see the colors change in that time and basically the print develops. Once you're done with the washing, I will now show you this magical trick I promised you. And for that you will need hydrogen peroxide. I think I'm using 9%. And you want to dilute that. 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 9 parts water. Put that in some kind of dish or bowl and then dip your print into it and leave it in there for about 10 seconds. And immediately you will see that the colors change from a sort of mid-blue to a very dark, vibrant, intense blue. And that's it. Now it's time to hang up or lay your print flat for drying. Right, and that's how you make a cyanotype print from your own digital negative. Here is my final print. You can see it's now brown. That's because I've toned it with black tea. It's very easy. Just boil a few liters of water and make a strong black tea. I always use 5 tea bags and then let it cool a bit and dip the print into that for a few minutes and it will change color. And then you can let it dry, and if you want to, you can seal your print with some wax to make it light print and prevent fading if you're hanging it up. I'm going to link you the wax I use below in the description. You just buff that on with a very soft cloth, let it dry 24 hours, and that's it. If you like this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.